All right, why don't we get started? Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you could join us today. We're in the final webinar of our series of It Takes a Village to Build a Business. And today, we're going to focus on enabling clients. My name is John Yamas, a principal consultant in the Thought Leadership and Advisory Services group here at Cornerstone. And I'm pleased to be the moderator for today's webinar. But before I begin, we've just got a few housekeeping items to cover. Number one, as in the past, if you've been on these, this webinar is being recorded and will be sent following in a follow-up email at a later date. Secondly, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so at any time using the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible during the designated Q&A time at the end of the presentation. And then finally, if you experience any technical issues, please send us a message and we'll have someone help you. We've got a really exciting webinar lined up for you today. You can see the agenda here. Again, it's focused on client enablement. Why does it matter? And so we're going to go into some client training tips, tricks and some pitfalls, a real-world example, and then we'll get into the Q&A. A little bit about my background. I've got an extensive history as an HR and IT executive in both business and consulting. And I'm using that experience here at Cornerstone to consult internally with product, marketing, and also with prospects and clients. So I really get to play in quite a wide playpen and enjoying it all the time, particularly because of some of the people I work with. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by my colleague, Brian Urbanek, on today's webinar. Brian is responsible for helping Cornerstone clients implement their training strategy. Prior to Cornerstone, Brian worked in instructional design at American Express, FICO, and other corporations. He'll be sharing his tips, tricks, and advice for avoiding pitfalls while training clients. And so with the intros out of the way, why don't we get started? And, okay, there we go. So if you've been on these webinars, you know that we like to start out with a definition and get a common understanding of what we're talking about. So in terms of enable, it's to provide the information, the content, and the tools to be more effective. So let's take that and apply it to the situation of a client or customer learning or training strategy. So the what in terms of client enablement is really you want to create an informed client or customer. The more they know about you, about your product and services, the better their decision-making and stickiness of that decision that occurs because they are informed and they do understand what your value proposition is. And that's really one of the other things you want to accomplish here, and that's to differentiate your brand and to reinforce that business value proposition at a one-to-one level. And training can do that. I do that often. I'm a big fan of Lowe's, and I many times have gone to their website to get some training on how to put drywall or create effects in woodwork, etc. So really valuable, and it's really strengthened that relationship that I have with them. And then finally, you want to extend your reach via social influence, and that's really an extension of how a lot of decisions are made today. And if you just think about, if I wanted to go buy a new kitchen appliance, what do? I'll go to Amazon and look up something, and I immediately scroll down to what other people are saying about it. And so that social influence will seep out, and if you have that informed customer, one that is tightly bound to you from a relationship standpoint for the information that you've been able to give them, the better off that's going to filter out through to the other areas where people are looking to make buy decisions. So what about some of the ways to enable that? Well, key messages, clear brand positioning and client value, making sure that those come through in any kind of training that you're doing, and making sure that that brand positioning is consistent with across your entire supply and consumer chains. So it's the same messaging to your suppliers, your partners, and with your clients, so that there's a consistency, and that value is just reiterated at every step. Another fine way is to provide answers to frequently asked questions in how-to videos. Again, I just gave you a personal example, and you can see how those have proliferated out on the web over the years, and they are very, very effective. You want to provide blended, on-demand, social, and mobile access. The mobile access part of it and on-demand are just absolute, they're almost table stakes today. People expect immediate responses, and they do it through their mobile devices. And obviously, it's something that we see a lot of, and I can see it continuing in this realm, particularly for the client, this micro-learning capability and the use of videos. And as we all know, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video might be 10 times that flavor. So these are some of the standard ways and key ways that you can enable your clients. And finally, as always, we want to look at, so what's the outcome that we're shooting for? Again, an educated client for all the reasons that we talked about. And the fact that you are building trust and brand loyalty. The fact that you have that brand loyalty has real significant bottom line impact, as it costs 5 to 6 times more to garner a new customer or client than it does to retain an existing one. So you can see immediately a bottom line impact there. But not only that, a lot of statistics are showing that engaged clients typically spend 20 to 40% more than unengaged clients. So really, again, establishing that relationship is so important, both at the beginning and as time passes by. And finally, one of the outcomes you can look for, and we've seen this in a number of clients, they can lower their overall support costs. So think about some of the questions that could be answered in through some training videos or from the frequent asked questions. Those are going to cut down on your calls to your service center and your customer assistance group. It won't totally replace it, but it will certainly help lower overall support costs. So that's the backdrop and framework. Again, if you have any questions, please put those into the Q&A area. We'll get to them. But I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who has the meat of this presentation, and this stuff I'm sure will delight you. So, Brian, it's all yours, bud.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm Brian Urbanek. I'm an implementation consultant for Cornerstone for Salesforce, and I've been with the company now for 2 years. I more or less work with clients to help get them started using Cornerstone for Salesforce. And frankly, a lot of my time also is to help them with Salesforce to a certain degree as well. And you're going to see that kind of sprinkled throughout this presentation that I'm going to provide you with today. My background is, as John alluded to earlier, is really as a training professional, both as an implementation consultant for our product, but also I have a pretty long history, about 15 to 20 years of being an e-learning developer, a classroom trainer, and just an overall training developer as well. And a large portion of that came from Dell. So thank you all for being here today, and let's dive into the material. So, you know, when you're implementing a learning management system and you're implementing it in such a way that you want clients to actually use the system, we use what is known as, with my product, we use Salesforce and CFS. And, you know, when you're focused on external learners and you want them to be able to use your training, they have to do that through a community, okay? And that's typically a customer community inside of Salesforce. Communities allow you to do many things, and one of the things they allow you to do is they allow you to engage with your clients via Chatter, okay? Chatter is a tool that's a social business and collaboration tool. And, you know, we recommend to our clients all the time, being in the Salesforce ecosystem, that they use that tool because it tends to simplify things for them. It helps their end users of their products and services become more engaged. When they can directly contact someone and actually say, if they have a question about something, for example. Another way that you can engage your end users with Salesforce through a community is through cases. They can create cases on their products and services and that you offer to them. Let's say they have a specific issue, and they can go and they can do that at that point. And another piece of a community is exposing your knowledge. So, you know, we actually have knowledge inside of our Salesforce org, and I'll show an example of that. But knowledge is you know, having a knowledge base that is exposed to your clients to actually consume. You know, they can self-resolve, right? They can search. They have a specific question. They can do a keyword search, and they may find an article telling them exactly how to do what they need to do with your product or service. And then finally, we have inside the Salesforce ecosystem, we have CFS. So you're engaged with your clients by communicating with them through Chatter. You're allowing them to create a case when they have an issue, and then you're allowing them to self-resolve through knowledge. But they can also use CFS to actually consume training. And we recommend, you know, generally speaking, for our clients that are actually using CFS to deliver training to their end users, we recommend that they think thoroughly about how to use all of those to engage and enable their clients. So that's kind of the way I start this presentation. And with that being the fundamental part of it, I want you to think about driving your clients to make it as easy as possible, okay? Make the process of accessing the community, especially the first time, as easy as possible. To access the community, a user must have a Salesforce contact inside of their Salesforce org. They must also be part of an account, but they must also not only be a Salesforce user of the community, but they must be a CFS user. That process of making, you know, granting them access can be very, very challenging if you do it manually, especially if you have a large client base. We have, in our company, we actually work with a partner called Aperio to simplify that registration process. So we would encourage, you know, to make that process as simple as possible. Another way that you can simplify things is once they're actually registered, you can trigger a video. Okay, that actually says, you're in the community now, here's what you can do here. You can go and you can create cases for your support issues, you can take training with CFS, you can consume knowledge if you're trying to self-resolve something, or you can create an idea. And inside of Salesforce communities, you can also create ideas that allow clients to actually what's the word I'm looking for? Actually provide you with feedback on your product or services. And it has a voting mechanism so that once that's posted, the rest of the client base can go and vote on it so that you can get direct feedback from your clients on how to improve your products. So make it easy. Think about making things as easy as possible. The other thing we recommend is make it relevant and timely and to the point, okay? So this has to do specifically with the training. Content inside of the learning management system needs to be relevant to each client's individual needs, okay? You may find that clients have multiple audiences, so it's really important that they know those different audiences and what their different needs are. With CFS, we know that our CFS clients are going to be training their clients on content that is going to be different. So what we've done is we've implemented a mechanism called catalogs, which allows the end user inside of CFS to search for specific content that is relevant to them. They can search for that content by role or by product. And for organizations that perhaps maybe have partners, they can create content and put it in a catalog that's specific to an account so that their partner employees only have access to that specific content. So that's one thing we recommend as far as relevant is concerned. It also must be timely. When, you know, I teach a CFS class to administrators, and one of the things I teach at the end of the class to increase adoption with CFS is to make sure there's seed content inside the system when they go live, okay? Don't go live with the system and not have content there. Also, as things change, products change, services change, make sure that your content is timely and as possible. In other words, make sure that you put the content out there when the iron is hot. Whenever the product change occurs, whenever a new product is released, or whenever a new service is offered, and you anticipate your clients want to use it, put it out there, get it out there. And that puts a lot of stress on the instructional design team, but if you do that, you will notice that your end users of the learning management system will become more engaged. And then finally, we talk about modularizing the content. Inside of CFS, or any learning management system for that matter, it really doesn't matter how great the interface is or how useful it may be or how much research has been put into it to make it useful. At the end of the day, all learning management systems also depend upon the content itself and how it's designed, okay? One of the prevailing theories that is out there today, and one of the things that research has shown, is that adults have very short attention span, okay? Long story short, we should make our content as modular as possible, short to the point, and show, let's say it's a longer training program. If it's a training program that's a series of videos, and that series of videos equals 30 minutes, you really should have at least 3 videos to deliver that content. So we want to make that content short and to the point, because the research indicates that after 6 to 9 minutes, people lose their attention span per video, okay? So make it relevant, timely, and modularize your content. The other thing we recommend is to make it fun, okay? Make the content as fun as possible. The best way to make content fun is to engage the senses in the adult learner. Now, there are 4 senses. You know, the senses are touch, taste, feel, and hear, okay? Well, we can't really do touch and taste with a learning management system. Touch is starting to move along with VR, but we're not VR enabled at this point. So really, and taste is out of the question at this point. We need to focus on learning through hearing and seeing and interacting with things. So the way we do that is we use tools for e-learning that actually allow us to engage the learner, okay? So we go and we use SCORE, and we use tools like that, okay? I recommend using content inside of CFS that is actually interactive, okay? Finally, the thing I want you to be aware of is CFS is software as a service. That means that the people who purchase CFS and use it on a daily basis, they purchase a license to use CFS over time. It's going to evolve, and functionality is going to change. So it's important for the administrator to keep the instructional design team and the overall enablement team, the training team, aware of what is changing so that you can leverage those new features. That's kind of our tips. Let's move on to tricks, and I just realized we're quickly running out of time here, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, when you're creating training inside of CFS, it's important to know your audience. If you don't know your audience, you're not going to be successful with the training regardless of the learning management system you're using. We talked about engaging the learners through social learning. One way to do that with clients in external training is to actually have, let's say it's a certification program, and that certification program occurs over a certain amount of time. You can create a chatter group that coincides or is part of that actual training program where people can interact with each other as they're learning through CFS about that specific product or service. And we also recommend using adult learning theory, okay? Adult learning theories, there's many adult learning theories out there, And, you know, there are tools that help instructional designers make the learning as effective as possible. Tools like Bloom's taxonomy, tools like, you know, knowing your audience, tools like the ADDIE model, tools like the Agile. We recommend having training that actually has a clear path associated with it. Again, it doesn't matter what learning management system you have. If you don't think about how your learners are going to actually consume the training and make it measurable, you're not going to be successful. And that leads us to measuring the impact. We want our clients to actually use CFS to measure the learning experience. And the way that's done is through productivity measures, things like how many classes were taught, things like financial measures, how much revenue did we generate on this course last year. Now that's a little bit of a challenge, the financial part, because you have to use a specific part of CFS to make that happen, and that's e-commerce. We have an e-commerce functionality inside of CFS, and if you want to measure the financial aspects of selling training, that's the only way you can do it. And then we have quality metrics. You know, you can measure the quality of the training using a course evaluation, okay? And then we have timeliness. Timeliness is pretty self-explanatory. You know, how many trainings did we do last year on this specific topic? And so let's move to the next slide, and let's talk about pitfalls, okay? One of the things that I've learned being an implementation consultant for CFS is that clients, when you work on an implementation team for a learning management system, you have a lot of different players. And typically those players boil down into two categories. People that are part of the people that are part of the training organization, I should say, or the enablement organization, and then people that are part of IT. What I've learned is if those two organizations do not communicate with each other during the implementation, the overall CFS strategy may fail, okay? So it's really important to make training become part of the overall community strategy. Typically, when you use a Salesforce community with your clients, you end up having that owned by the IT organization in the company. And you also have the training organization, and sometimes those two organizations don't communicate well. So it's really important for the training team to understand the underlying platform, the community itself, to deliver training to the end users. And it's also important for the admin team, the IT team, to understand the overall training strategy, okay? Because at the end of the day, they're going to measure the overall success of the training. Okay, and that's pretty much all I have to cover on this slide. Let's move on to the examples. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to show you some examples of how the things that I just provided you, as far as the best practices, the tips, tricks, and pitfalls, what we've done inside of our system. So what we have here is, can you go back one slide? Okay, thank you. So this is our client success community. This is an example of a Salesforce community with the tools, the end user tools that I mentioned before. At the top of the screen, you have the ribbon. So we've got chatter and groups. Those are tools that you can use to communicate with your clients, okay? You know, to actually solve specific problems. You also have access to cases, okay? That's where you can go and you can provide an issue that you're having with a product. And then you have knowledge. Knowledge is another tool that clients can use to self-resolve problems. They can go and they can search for knowledge and it will help them solve their problems. We have the ideas, and then we have my training. My training is CFS inside of the community, okay? And as you can see here, we have an example of a chatter post where they were asking us something very specific, and we helped them resolve that specific problem. We move on to the next slide. Here we have an example of chatter working with our monthly how-to training. What you see here is you see Amanda. Amanda is our colleague. She's actually going and she's working with the clients as we deliver our monthly how-to training. And this is just an example of social learning, taking the learning out of the learning management system and socializing it so that the end users of the training can work together to ask questions or solve problems, okay? And next slide, please. Oh, I think we went too far. Yeah, let me go back one here. Oh, I got it, John. Thank you. So this is actually the My Training tab. Once you click on it, it takes you to your transcript, and it shows you the things that are actually in progress, okay? So we have the April how-to training, we've got the CFS email notifications. And what the user is able to do here is they're able to see the training that they actually have in progress, and they can click on each one of the items they have in progress and actually go and learn from it. We also, if you notice in the top right-hand corner, we've also got the calendar. They can search for training that is actually available to them. And a lot of the things that we were talking about today had to do with the catalog. So the catalog, what that does is it allows the end users to self-enroll. And they can search for training that's specific to them and their role. They can search for training that's specific to a product or a service that you're offering. And as you can see here, they can enroll in specific training. I'm going to take a break now because we need to we need to open up for questions. So sorry.
All right, thanks, Brian. I know it's a topic with a lot of points, and I know it's tough to get through it in such a short time. But as you say, we do have a few questions. So let me run one by you here. How do you train clients on how to use the training?
How do you train clients on how to use the training? That's a really good question. You know, a lot of that has to do with the interface, but I think it's more about providing examples, right? Showing them how to get into the tool quickly and actually accessing the content that they need. It's more about teaching the interface a little bit more and then giving them relevant examples that apply to them. When I worked at FICO, we actually had a short video that showed how to use FICO University, and it was very helpful. But it was more tailored towards employees than it was actual clients of our clients. So what we did is we had that as the first item that was actually in their learning path when they actually went and got assigned their onboarding program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know the analogy that I use when I put in large HCM systems is this concept of thinking about the person or the persona and what are they doing right at that moment. And so building many steps for them to understand how to use, and then over time that becomes a memory. So very consistent. Another question, what are some metrics we should be looking at if we aren't charging for our courses? And I think that's got to be the last question.
Okay. If you are, and to be clear, it's if you're not charging for training, correct?
If you're not charging for the courses and they want to demonstrate the impact of the program.
Absolutely. So you definitely should be looking at productivity. How much training was delivered? And you may want to look at how much training was delivered per audience or per instructor. So you can do all of those things. You can see that, for example, I taught 10 classes and John only taught 3 last year. Maybe we need to balance that. So that helps you with resource and capacity, so productivity. You definitely should be considering quality. You know, how well was the training delivered? And typically that's done through a survey, okay? And it would be done inside of CFS as an actual quiz, an unscored quiz, where you ask questions about, you know, things like were the objectives actually presented during the training, or things like this training will help me to do my job, or this training will help me to use this product for an external audience.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would do too, Brian, is link that to business outcomes. So if some of the training is designed ultimately to have clients, you know, self-resolve, then I'd want to be able to link that up to, you know, what's been the level of calls into the service center or to the customer service rep. So it's those kinds of linkages, as well as the, you know, so it's the efficiency and the effectiveness of the training. And those are always very key metrics that execs want to know. And
yep.
I know we could go on for a long time here, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I want to again thank all of our participants who have joined us, and particularly those who've been here for the 3 series that's gone on the last 2 weeks. And it's been a pleasure putting this together for you. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a recording of this in the next couple of days, and you'll certainly be notified. So again, thank you so much for your time, and hope you found it worthwhile. I know we did. So long,
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.